right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the opening day of World Dairy Expo. So thank you all for coming. Today's speaker is going to be Stan Irwin on how to handle difficult questions from consumers and make a difference from dairy. He's also going to be accompanied by these three lovely ladies here to my left, and hopefully giving some good examples and maybe some not so good examples on how to handle questions. Stan is the vice president currently of the producer communications for Dairy Management Incorporated. He trains dairy farmers and industry stakeholders in the checkoff-led consumer confidence effort, including those of social media, farm tours, which I'm sure we do get a lot of, hopefully, on your farm, and other just general conversations. Prior to being at DMI, Stan was with Dairy Herd Management Magazine. For anybody who might be a veterinarian or involved with the group of ARPIS, we do have continuing education credits approved for this seminar for those organizations. So please see me in the back if you're one of those people who needs the paperwork. Finally, we just ask everybody to please silence your phone before we begin. And with that, Stan, I will turn it over to you for an hour of training.
Thank you, Liz, very much, and thanks to World Dairy Expo for the invitation. And you know, again, as I looked at it, and I've got 22 and 25-year-old daughters, so they remind me that I'm not necessarily the consumer base anymore. And so I said, you know what I need with me? I need some farmers, and I need some ladies from some different age groups. So they qualify. So Marilyn Hershey, dairy farmer from Pennsylvania, and also a board member with our organization. Tracy Luce, calf manager with Rosie Lane Holsteins in Watertown. And Amanda Hintz, a student at River Falls and also a PDPW intern. And they are our card-carrying millennials, so they'll help me out there. But this is going to be very interactive. We've only got 45 minutes. So we're going to really try to impart to you some basic skill sets and techniques that ideally you'll be able to leave here, and if you take a plane flight home, or if you find yourself at a ball game later in the week, you'll be comfortable engaging a consumer in a difficult question. Because I think what we've learned today is every conversation counts. So we want you to feel comfortable in engaging and telling dairy's story. You know, today, as we look at the dairy checkoff, you know, our focus is increasing sale and consumption of dairy products. But increasingly, it's on consumer confidence, because if consumer confidence wanes, so will sales. So we all must seize the opportunity to, again, engage, whether it's friends, family, neighbors, people in our community, or those of you that are active in social media. I think our three retired farmers here, you mentioned initially, well, how are we going to reach all the people when we're only 2% of society today? It's through millennials and it's through online communities to be able to reach out and have that ripple effect of the message. But that's the other key, is we've got to have a common voice and a common message. Because if a consumer hears three different messages, at best they're confused, at worst, they don't trust the messenger. So again, a checkoff-led effort in consumer confidence to activate the entire industry, stakeholders in the industry, farmers with consumers, to tell our story about our values, how we care for our animals, how we care for the land and the resources entrusted to us, and all of the commitments that we make to ensuring that there is safe, nutritious milk and all the safeguards that are in place to assure that. As I said, we're limited in time, so we're going to build on messages. I think the one thing I ask you to do is when you leave here today, do something. Activate, try these skills. We're going to do a little role playing. We'll do a little practice session in the four corners of the room. This is a safe environment. This doesn't come natural, but I think if you just practice it and you try it, you're going to find out that it works. There we go. So again, the role of the dairy checkoff. Increase consumption and sales by working with partners. And you recognize those partnerships, and if you don't, come by our booth and we'll tell you a bit more about the partnerships and how we're multiplying the farmer's investment through the work with partners. Research and consumer-tested messaging. The flip books that you have. We test these messages with consumers. I want to point out when you look through this flip book, which you will use to build some of your messages, some of these messages say in response mode only, because certain things that we talk about are not on the consumer's frontal lobe. They don't just automatically think about dehorning until there's a media story about it. So just be cautious when you look at this to what we call not break into jail. Don't raise a question with a consumer that didn't exist before you started talking to them. Communications and training council. We do a lot of this all across the industry, just like today's session. So we're thrilled you're here. Farmer Spokesperson Network. Again, trained farmer spokesperson that can, again, talk with the media and others. My Dairy. I have a cohort in the back of the room who manages the My Dairy Advocate Network, which is, again, at the end of the day, there'll be a evaluation. If you want to get some of these tools, just give us your email address. We're not going to spam you and send you a bunch of stuff, but if you want these advisories on issues and messages that you can use, please sign up. The other is Dairy Good. Dairy Good is our website, our Facebook, a blog, if you will, where if a consumer searches dairy, they don't go to Wikipedia, they come to Dairy Good and they see stories about dairy farm families and what we do in terms of our animals, our families, and again, those human interest stories. So, Marilyn, I'd like to hand off to you and talk a little bit about the importance of an introduction, which I didn't give, by the way.
Introduce myself. My name is Marilyn Hershey, and I farm with my husband. I've been farming with him for the past 30 years. And Our Joy Holsteins was started by his parents, Art and Joyce Hershey. We farm 40 minutes north of the Chesapeake Bay, so we are very concerned about the quality of our soil, and we put a lot of care into our crops. We have a passion to provide a very enjoyable workplace for our employees. We like to provide a comfortable and safe environment for our animals and our cows. And we supply a nutritious, delicious, and quality product, milk, for you, so you can have that on your table. So as you can see, that's a different introduction than we are used to when we talk farmer to farmer. Before this room filled up, the three gentlemen and Tracy were discussing back and forth, and they were talking about Tracy's responsibilities on her farm. And it was very much like we talk to each other. How many cows do you milk? How many calves do you feed? And that's what we want to know when we talk farmer to farmer. But when you're talking to consumers, that doesn't resonate with them like the emotion that of how much we care for our animals and the quality product that we're trying to get to them. So in your handout, you have a little guide to help you just come up with what I did was I took my mission statement for the farm and I turned it into more of an emotional introduction of who we are. And I'm going to let Tracy and Amanda, I'm sorry, I'm not, I just met them this morning. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
My name is Tracy. I grew up on my family's dairy farm in northeast Wisconsin, where I developed a love for agriculture and a passion for dairy and working with the dairy calves. I continued my education in agriculture by attending the University of Wisconsin River Falls, where I majored in dairy science. After graduating, I took a position working as the calf care manager on a dairy farm in Watertown, Wisconsin, where every day I get to wake up and do what I love and work with the calves and work with amazing employees every day.
My name's Amanda Hintz. I was born and raised on a beef operation, and when I was 12, I started working on a dairy. I currently am a junior at the University of River Falls as a dairy science and egg business major. And I also work as a calf manager on a 1,000 cow dairy, where my goal each day is to make sure that my calves are mentally, physically, and emotionally happy and content.
So if I can, did you notice the emotion? Did you notice the values that they were able to intertwine with their introduction? It wasn't just them, it was about them, their values, and their calves, because the consumer today is less concerned about our competency. What they want to know is, do we care? Because an Iowa State study basically said that to the consumer, values are 5 times more important than competency. So we need to always lead with values. It's the old, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care.
So you can see after you have the introduction, then the conversation begins with the consumer. And so we'd like to hear from you now. We would like 5 difficult questions or concerns that you hear, that you have heard from neighbors. Maybe it was from the media. Maybe it was from someone else in your community. Who did you, or a tour you had on your farm? What questions have you heard? Just go ahead and shout them out. So how do we know they're happy? We're going to make a list of these questions over here. So how do we know that these animals are happy? That's very important for consumers. Anybody else? What questions have you heard? Why are they so thin? Good question.
That's a good one.
Good question. I never got that one, but that is a good. That's a valid one when they compare beef to dairy. Yeah. Why are the babies away from the mothers? That's another very important, that's a question we get a lot. There was another one over here. Same one? GMOs, that's a big question right now, isn't it?
What do you hear about milk? What's in it? What's not in it? Hormones and antibiotics. What about care of the land, care of the resources? Water. Depends where you are. I grew up in western Kansas. Dairies used all the water. Other places, they're polluting the water. But it really gets back to the resources, the stewardship. What are you doing to care for the land, right? So those are just some of the examples that we wanted to look at. Obviously, we're not going to be able to answer every one of those today in 45 minutes, but what we want to do is give you a way and some techniques to welcome those questions and then begin to look at using the flip books and creating your value-based messages around animal care and, again, dairy farmers' commitment to producing safe, high-quality milk and all the tests in place to assure quality milk. So we've done that.
So now we're going to talk about more interaction from you guys. And what we would like to know is, like, what frustrates you when people are trying to talk to you that may not know what you're doing or what it's about, like why we're farming or the techniques we use. And, you know, what's challenging about that for you, or what is challenging about facing other people or not knowing what to say, or, you know, what frustrates you or challenges you. And then, you know, what would you like to learn today that could help you answer those questions in a better manner or make it easier to, you know, not be so frustrated or not have as many challenges after you leave today.
And or what are some of our tendencies? What are some of the tendencies that we just tend to rely on or we tend to go to as people that are, you know, very immersed in the dairy industry?
Well, I think one of our tendencies that we tend to have is that we anger very easily. We get defensive. And we don't want to start by setting out to win an argument. We want to have a conversation. We want to welcome questions, and we want to tell them, I'm glad you asked that. One of the things we tend to do is we tend to over-answer the question. We try to fluff it up with science, and we really want to get back down to the emotions and talk to the consumer with language that they're going to understand. Everyone in the dairy industry tends to have jargon or use terms that only people in the dairy industry understand, and we need to remember that we need to talk on consumer terms and not the farm lingo.
I had a speaker that I had the chance to hear one time, and he basically noted that people in the industry, farmers in particular, you have a doctorate in farming. The consumer's got a third-grade education. You know, we talk about the disconnects with the farmer. Generations have not set foot on a farm, and if they hear anything about a dairy farm, it's the picture of the dairy farm that their parents or their grandparents grew up on that they paint. So that's that tendency where we've got to just understand, begin with some very simple examples, and then ask questions as you go. Does that answer your question? Does that help you understand? Any other tendencies that the group would note that we tend to fall into when we engage with consumers about questions, or maybe frustrations that you have? Anybody? Yes, Linda.
I think we probably tend to talk too much instead of just giving them short little snippets. But I know I'm guilty of when get asked a question, I give them a whole lot.
You know, that's a good one. I think you're exactly right, we do that. And a way that I've tried to break that habit is about when I think I've answered the question and starting to go to another level, I ask, does that answer your question? And a lot of times that breaks the rhythm, and a lot of times you know what the answer I get is? Yeah, that answered the question. What else? Anybody? Yes, Jolene.
So I think one of the things that we tend to do is we don't take pride in what we do as dairy farmers. We're not telling the customers.
Did everybody hear that? She said, her comment was, I think as dairy farmers, we don't take enough pride in what we do. We do internally, and we keep it to ourselves, but we're hiding it under a bushel basket. We don't tell others our story. And quite frankly, we do a lot of work with a lot of organizations, and we see farmers, when they go to a school, they're a rock star. Kids want to know a farmer. They just think it's the coolest thing. They heard that grandfather was, so that's a great point. Anything that either of the three of you would like to add? Okay. So I think it's very important, because this is probably not going to be a real news bulletin to all of you, but everybody in this room, we represent a segment of consumers today, but we're really not the consumer. And so, as Stephen Covey puts it, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's like any good speaker. Know the audience. You know, I ask each of you, what parts of the industry are we from? Know the audience before we start to engage with the audience. Otherwise, we're probably going to do this. We'll only be very fortunate if we connect on anything. So I'd like to play a short video clip that I think will give you a feeling for what today's society looks like, or a segment of it. So a couple of my favorites in there. I still own a toothbrush. Giving up my sense of smell for my technology. No, I love to smell my wife's cooking. Goldfish and human attention span. So if I do the math right, it took 2 humans to measure that goldfish's attention span, right? Okay, I got the first 4 seconds. Linda, you got the second. And what I want you to understand when we talk about common voice, we talk about engaging with consumers, it's not just social media. I want you to understand social media is not a fad. This is the way that we can reach a lot. But one-on-one conversations in your neighborhoods, with friends and family, because a lot of our friends and family are disconnected from dairy, are asking the same questions they need to know. Farm tours, one-on-one. There's any number of ways that you can engage, and that's what we encourage you to do, is activate with consumers to tell our story, but with a common voice using some of the messages that we've been able to give you. So very quickly, best messages. Think of it the old 3-legged milking stool. Farmers care for their animals. Farmers care for the environment and the resources entrusted to them. And dairy farmers are committed to producing safe, high-quality, nutritious milk. Those are the 3 core messages. If you look and just, the front part of the key message flip book, you're going to see some other really good entry-level messages. Dairy farmers are committed to providing you safe, high-quality milk. 97% of dairy farmers are family-owned. That's a USDA statistic. The look of the family farm has changed, but so has the look of the hardware store. So has the look of the grocery store. There's nothing going on in dairy that hasn't happened in other industries. And often when you point that out to somebody, they go, oh, yeah, I hadn't realized that. Farms have modernized and grown larger to what? To allow siblings and family members to join the dairy, to expand. Dairies require large investments, land, buildings, equipment. So many banks today require that the dairies incorporate. That's where LLC or incorporation comes from. It's to assure that there's a succession plan as part of the dairy. It doesn't mean they're corporate dairies. So I think one of the things that I hear from farmers around the country that I really enjoy would be right at the introduction when somebody says, we're a 5th-generation dairy farm. Because what does that do? That says I'm a family farm, and it takes the factory farm label right off the table immediately. Go ahead and pass back to you guys. Now we're going to talk about the worksheet and developing the messages. I think the message, I said values earlier. We've got to remember today, science collides with emotions. If I answer your question about my values, and I answer it with science, no connection, is there? Or I tell you I do it, to make sure that we profitably produce milk. What did you hear in that answer? You only do it for the money.
It was interesting. My son, Stephen, was our oldest son, worked in New York City for 10 years. And one time we were having a conversation about farming, and he used the word factory farm. And, first of all, I had to pick myself up off the table because he grew up on the family farm. And I said, well, Stephen, we're a family farm. 98% of the farms in the country are even, no matter what size, are family operations. And I started telling him story after story after story. And he said, well, that's what we want to hear. So, consumers, and he was working in Manhattan at a farm-to-fork restaurant, okay? But they still had this mentality that a large farm is a factory farm. But we have to learn to convey, and the more I talked about, anytime I talked about the science of how we created milk, that didn't resonate. But when I talked about the farm family, he said, that's what you need to do. You guys need to tell your story. And that's just something we have to learn to do.
It's a great story. And Fortune 500 companies have developed storytelling departments because they've realized that, again, that attention span thing. If you can't boil it down and make it a story, because a story is what? Memorable, and it's much more repeatable than a bunch of stats and figures and such. And it has that human interest side. So what we're going to do now is you're going to find a worksheet that looks like this. And we're going to want you to get it out because this is going to be where you don't have a pen or a pencil. We're going to start to actually begin to create some messages. On the back of each, you will find a message development worksheet. But I'm going to hand it back to Tracy and Amanda to kind of walk you through the way we'll approach it. And then each of us will come through the aisles, and we've got a lot of other dairy farmers and board members here with us who can kind of pull alongside you and help you create your messages. But go ahead and write down your messages and create them, because at the end, we're going to go into the four corners and we're going to have batting practice. We're going to go ahead and ask each of you to answer a few of the questions. Now, the rules of that would be that if you start to answer the question, he's thinking of how he's going to help you with the next part. He's not going to just look at you and go, "That's really good, Bob." So you're going to help each other, all right? And this is what the practice is about. So go ahead and take it away, please. And
Okay, so first, when we're building our values-based message, one of the things we want to make sure is that we don't lead with science. It's not that we can't use science, but we don't want to lead with it.
We also want to think about our ethical obligation, as in, why are we doing it? And we always, you usually want to talk about, like, obviously it's for the care of your animals, the way you do things or why you're doing a certain thing, and to produce a high-quality product for your consumer and a safe one.
The next thing is we want to show and tell what we do. Most consumers have never been on a farm, so we want to explain to them that most of our cows see the vet more than one human sees a doctor. And our nutritionists, they work hard, to provide a balanced diet for our cows.
yes, I should have a nutritionist.
We also want to tell how we know that it's effective, our techniques. And here you can bring in the science for verification. If they're like, well, you just made that up. You can come up with some, science based on why you do what you do and why it's effective.
See the difference? You're using science or business records to justify that we know it works. You're not using it as a moral justification to lead with. It's really going to be about care at the front end.
And the final thing is that it makes business sense. That we do have the business information to back up what we do.
So, when you begin to look at the message map or building value-based messages, across the top, and if you'll hand me the blue marker, this red one doesn't seem to want to work. So we've already put in the value statement. Dairy farmers care for their cows. So there's the value statement. Now you're going to create the 3 pillars of proof. Why 3? There's something magic about 3. People remember 3s. So 4's too many, 2's too few, but 3's just right. So you just want to, again, develop those 3 messages, and there's plenty. And they're in the flip book, so you'll see that each of your flip books is tabbed in 2 sections, so you can find it easy to get to. But what we'd like you to do, and you can work in teams, or you can work by yourself, whatever you'd like to do, but we'd like you to develop your value statement and your points of proof for dairy farmers care for their animals, care for their cows. The second one, if you get to it and have time, or if you would prefer to address it, dairy farmers are dedicated to producing safe and nutritious milk and the regulations and tests that safeguard your food. So this really gets to one of the questions that was brought up earlier, and that was about antibiotics. Questions? Absolutely. Get me your card and I'll make sure I get you one. But I'm thrilled that we're getting a take on that. So let's spend the next 10 minutes, and then we're just going to ask a few of you to share your messages with us, all right? This is like the exit aisle at the plane. Okay? Yes. All right, good. So let's go ahead and get started. Anybody needs help, yell. We've also got some other dairy farmers from our board here that if you want some help, they've looked at these messages. They'll be more than glad to help you out. right, look at her. She's going. Thank you. Find them. Fran, thank you very much.
Okay. Value statement is dairy farmers care for their cows, and the 3 pillars of proof would be 1, dairy farmers work closely with vets and nutritionists to keep their cows healthy and comfortable. 2, cow comfort is important to dairy farmers because it leads to high quality milk. And 3, calves grow up to become the cows that produce milk, so farmers make it a priority to get them off to a good start.
What do you think? Real simple, real succinct. Nice job, Fran.
Who else? Volunteers.
We have the lady and gentleman in the back row, and she threw him under the bus, so.
But dairy farmers caring for their cows, some things we do, we're very concerned about cow comfort. Most of the large dairies now are free-stall, sand-bedded. We're cleaning our pens 3 times a day. We're grooming their stalls 3 times a day. We have feed in front of them 24 hours a day. We have all the dairies will have quality nutrition. Most of them have good nutritionists to work with your dairy to make sure you're getting exactly what the cow needs, not too much of something or not enough of something, just the right amount for the cow to keep her healthy and producing. And then how we handle cows, I think, is a big deal. No loud noises around cows or whistling at cows, or that's kind of a culture thing at dairies. You go to some dairies, you hear a lot of noise stuff, and cows have very sensitive ears, so you want to be calm and quiet around your cows at all time, not really pushing your cows. The cows go kind of move on their own pace. So those are some of my the 3 pillars of caring for your animals.
Excellent. What words did you hear that kind of resonated? Did you hear anybody? Cow comfort, care, quiet, calmness. Some really nice values. You can tell there's a lot of feeling there. So well done. I understand why she volunteered you. Who else? Anybody? So Amanda, really quickly, I could tell you what my daughters tell me that millennials want, but I'm not going to go there. But, you're in school. I'm sure you talk with other people that are in school that aren't familiar with dairy. What would you offer to the group about talking with a younger person about dairying?
Well, when I run across members that are consumers from the city or friends that are from the city, they don't even know what we do. They're really confused. Like, if you say cow manager, calf manager, they're not even sure what that means. So they just want the basics, like as simple as you can get it, as good as they want. Like, so they just want to know, they always want to know, well, is your baby fuzzy? Does it like its ears scratch? What does she do? What does it do? They want to know the basics, and like if there is something on the news or something that is an outbreak, whether it's like, an abuse video or something, I'm the first one they run to, because they want, if they know you're a farmer and they know you're in the, like, you would be familiar with a situation like that, that's what they want, to be able to come and confide in you. And to be as simple and as direct as you can be is what they're looking for. They just want like the basics, like, so a cow calves, how does that work? Or, what do you feed your animals? Do they, what do they like to do? Do they play? They just want basics and just information like that. A lot of millennials also think that your food comes from the grocery store. So breaking it to them that your food comes from an animal and then the grocery store is a big woof to a lot of kids. So, just starting with, nope, that's not exactly how that works, and explaining just a simple process of how it gets from maybe the farm to the store is just really gaining their education there quite a bit. So that's what I run across a lot at school. So. Hi, Stan.
Well, hi, Amanda.
How are you?
I'm
Good.
good. I'm
Oh,
good.
perfect. I was watching a news story, and it talked about antibiotic use in livestock, and I was just curious. Is there antibiotics in our milk?
Antibiotics in milk. Boy, that conversation, it frustrates me. How'd you get here? How'd you get to Expo?
Well, I drove a car.
Okay. You know your probably 10 times more likely to be killed in a car than you are antibiotics in milk.
Well, geez, I just had a question, Stan.
Well, once you go, well, let's talk about it another time.
Oh,
I'm busy. I got to get back from milking.
Oh, sorry.
How'd I do? I had a New York group tell me I could just keep going. So let's try it again.
Hi, Stan.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
So I seen a news story on TV about antibiotic use in livestock, and I was just wondering if there's antibiotics in our milk.
Well, first, can you tell me a little bit more about the story that you heard, or maybe your concern?
I guess that I was just wondering, like, why farmers feed antibiotics to their cattle, and would it be safe for me to feed milk to my family?
Okay, great. Well, first, I'm really glad you asked, because there's a lot of confusion and misinformation about antibiotic use, both on the farm and even among doctors with children and how they prescribe it. So I'm really glad you asked. Relative to the question why farmers use antibiotics with all their cows, they don't. For instance, we use antibiotics or medications on our cows like you would. I think you've got an aunt, you've got some nieces and nephews, right? Mm-hmm. I do too. So so I care for the kids. We use antibiotics and medications with the cows just like you would your nieces and nephews. Under the care of a veterinarian, if they're ill, we want them to get better. So in that case, we would use that. But all dairy cows do not get antibiotics, only the ones that are sick, and again, with the care and the oversight of a veterinarian. So then, that cow that's been given the medication, the antibiotics, she is milked separately. Her milk is discarded. That milk never gets mingled with the food supply. And there are tests, the farm, when the processor picks up the milk, that would indicate that, and there are severe penalties if milk was found and the whole tanker would be dumped and the farmer whose test had antibiotics in it would pay for the tanker. Does that help answer your question?
It does, but then how come when you go to the grocery store you find milk or dairy products that say no hormones, antibiotics, or pesticides?
Another great question. So that label is about the management practices that dairy chooses to use. It's not about the milk. The milk is identical, same 9 essential minerals and nutrients. It's about the management practices. So you as a consumer, if you identify with those management practices that dairy chooses to use, by all means, it's America, it's choice. By all means, buy it. But don't buy it because you're afraid of the other milk. They're identical. Does that help?
It does. Do you think I'd be able to call you if I had some more questions?
Absolutely, or stop by the farm and bring friends.
Oh, perfect.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so will you walk them through the process or the technique of handling difficult questions?
Sure. So we had good Stan, bad Stan, right?
That's me.
What did you see? What were the differences? Very defensive. Very defensive. His body language, did you notice that? Crossed his arms, kind of didn't have time for her. If you look in your packets, we also have how to handle those difficult questions. Some tips that you have, be a strong listener. The second time, good Stan was a strong listener. He listened to those questions. He wasn't in her face. Did you notice the first time he was like leaning in and kind of in her face? And the second, good Stan, he gave her some space. And that's all part of the listening. You can listen with your body language as well. And asking questions. He asked her, hey, did I answer that? That's good. So you find your common ground, and in the end, they had a nice discussion. She had the information she needed. She had a lot more knowledge on that her milk was safe and a great product, and it came from a good place, and that's what we want to convey with our consumers.
And these techniques really do work. Practice them. I think you probably saw me, I welcomed the question. I didn't hold it off. Thank you for asking. That's probably one of the most powerful ones, because when you ask the question, that shows a big word today in society and corporations is transparency. When I say, wow, I welcome the question, the first thing they go is, wow, doesn't seem to want to run from that. He seems very willing to answer that. I don't have anything to hide. Transparency is absolutely huge. So we're getting near the time to call an end to this, but I don't want to let the group escape without the batting practice. So let's take this quarter of the room, say from here, and you go up into that front corner. Let's take this group, and you go into that back corner. This group into this back corner, and this group into this front corner. And we've just got a series of questions. We're not going to get to everybody, but we're just going to let you practice a little bit, okay? Come on. So it's getting warm in here now? So I've got this group, okay. So if you want to bring your messages, bring them with you. All right. Now, this is a good group. So, all right. All right, so the question, and again, the rules are the game, somebody starts. Whoever starts first, don't leave them hanging. Somebody build on the message using some of the stuff we talked with, okay? He's got it. Yes, so thank you. So in your folders, you're going to find a red evaluation form. And would like you to actually, no, it's not the red evaluation form, it's this one. It's a salmon. So if you would fill that out and provide your email address or some of the other resources and tools that we can get to you. Yeah. If you would do that for us, please, before you take off, thank you very much. So again, the evaluation form is in the back of your folder. If you would fill that out and give us your email address. It's also got a list of other states and regions. Thanks, Fran. Other states and regions where you can go and get additional training.